This is Gabe with Big Fella Outdoors here, and today we're going to be going over how to float fish for salmon in the Midwest. Now let's start with, when do you want to be fishing for these fish and what are the conditions? So your main target is going to be September through mid-October, and the first big rain of September is what's going to get you started. Now what's a big rain? A big rain is an inch or more. An inch or more is going to be getting a lot of those fish out of the harbors and into the rivers. Now a half inch will do a bit. 2 inches is fantastic. So that's what you'll be looking for, and that's what you need to get started. Now, you quit around mid-October because those fish start to get really dark and they aren't really worth fishing for. They don't fight, and you can't really eat them. So again, that's September, the first big rain, to mid-October. So let's start off with the basics. Your main line, your bumper, your float, your inline weight, your leader, your hook, and your bait. Now let's start off with your main line. So for main line in the fall, I'm going to be running braid the majority of the time. Some people like mono, but I like braid. It floats better. It's easier to mend, and I run braid as much as I can when there isn't freezing temperatures. And personally, Power Pro is my favorite brand. I'm sure there's other brands out there that you're fond of, whatever floats your boat. But I tend to go 20. A lot of people will go 30 or even 50. 20 is typically enough for me in the rivers that I tend to fish. But if you're fishing a lot of smaller tribs that have a lot of timber, then you might need to go up to 30 or 50. Depends. You got to learn your water and you got to find out for yourself. I personally like a high-vis yellow. It allows you to see better when you're float fishing in the early hours of the morning and into the wee hours of the evening. And it's simple enough, guys. That's about it. Now we're at the bumper. So what is a bumper? A bumper is a piece of line typically 4 to 5 feet long from your main line to your inline weight where you place your float. A lot of guys will run their float on their main line. I'm not one of those guys. I think the bumper adds a bit of finesse to your presentation. And it's a little easier to keep your float from sliding up and down in the braid. A lot of guys will run a mono bumper. This adds shock resistance to your rig. Similar concept to a snubber on a dipsy diver. But I don't think that matters all that much. We're running, salmon purposed rods anyway. So, but yeah, that's a bumper. I'm running a 20-pound bumper most of the time, for kings anyway. And it's pretty simple. Alright guys, and now we're at floats. So there's two different kinds of floats. There's your fixed floats, which I've shown here, and your slip floats. And these are for two different applications. Your fixed floats, which you're probably going to be using the most of, are for your average Midwest river, where your holes are about 4 to 6 feet, and you don't really have to run anything deeper than that. The slip float is for your bigger, deeper rivers, where your holes are 10 to 20 feet, and it's a little more difficult to cast that with a fixed float. So you'll notice that I have 17.5 gram highlighted. If you're a steelhead fisherman, you're probably used to running floats half that or 2/3 of that. You're running a lot bigger and beefier setups in general for kings. They're a lot bigger fish and they fight a lot harder. They don't have the jumps as steelhead, but they do have the bigger runs and they're more difficult to land, that's for sure. For these fixed floats, I have Nova up here because I find them to be very consistent when it comes to floats. There's a lot of brands out there. I've used a lot of off-brand floats from Amazon. I've used floats from mom and pop shops all over the Midwest, and to each their own. If you find something that really works well for you, or you want to make your own floats, go crazy with it. But that's all I have to say for now. So now we have our weight. Me personally, I'm a big inline weight guy. A lot of guys will use a shot line. A shot line is a barrel swivel after your bumper, then a line on your leader of shots going down to your hook. Me personally, I'm not too fond of a shot line. I've used it a couple times and it's a pain to rig, and it doesn't seem to work better than an inline weight, so why not use an inline weight? So that's what I do. I typically buy them from Amazon as pictured here. They're cheap and, in my experience, are as reliable as anything else you can get. So these are what I tend to use. And let's say I showed you an 18 gram float or a 19 gram float previously. 15 gram inline will work pretty good. So now we're back here. We're back at from bumper to leader. And again, I'm probably using 20-pound leader in the beginning of September, going down to 15 as the weeks go on. Once you get into October, those fish do not fight as hard, so you don't need 20. And the thinner line you can get away with, the more bites you're going to get. All salmon and steelhead are line sensitive, but when you get those fresh fish off that first rain, 20 pound is definitely necessary. It'll save you, especially around those logs. You need that extra abrasion resistance. Now, what hooks am I running? I am very fond of Gamakatsu hooks. For steelhead fishing, for my trolling setup for the pier, I am almost always running Gamakatsu hooks. Now, for skein, which is the bait I'll get to later, I'm typically running a size 1 hook. Some guys run a 1/0, even a 2/0, but I find that a little big. And if you're flow fishing skein, get some red hooks. It blends into the bait better. And I'm typically running a size 1, and I have that tied on with a snell knot. Now, why a snell knot? A snell knot lets you pull out your leader around the hook so you can keep your bait on the hook better. Now, it's not imperative you tie a snell knot. I have gotten lazy some days and just put my skein on the hook, but it doesn't last as long, and I only really resort to that when it's my 30th leader of the day because I keep breaking off on logs and I'm getting frustrated. But you can always pre-tie leaders, and a snell knot for skein fishing is best. And for bead fishing, you can just stick to your fisherman's knot or whatever knot you enjoy. And that's all I have to say. Now we're going to be going over rigging slip floats. How do I rig a slip float? So for a slip float, I'm going to be skipping out on the bumper. I'm going to be running a longer leader. So a slip float, I'm going to be putting a bobber stop on my main line, and then under that bobber stop a bead, and then another bead under my slip float, and then I'm going to be tying on the inline weight. So for a slip float, again, that's bobber stop, bead, bobber, and then bead, and then your inline weight. So, and then to that, instead of a 3 to 4 foot leader, let's say we're running a 4 to 6 foot leader with your slip float. Again, these are deeper holes, and we're not running shot on our bait. So your bait's going to be freely moving in these holes. And I find that actually gets more bites because it looks more natural in the water, or to each their own. And then you move your bobber stop up and down depending how deep you want your bait set. So now we're here at rods and reels, and this is particularly subjective. So I'm a big bait caster guy. I have this specific rod right here, a 10-6 heavy, carbon salmon and steelhead, and I've caught quite a few fish on it. It's a good rod. It's lasted me, I want to say I've had it for 4 years now. No issues. And the big caster I have on it is this aloe hose. Works good, no complaints. Again, I've had it for about 4 years. And then for spitting tackle, a lot of guys run these SSTs. They don't make um, a 10.6 medium heavy SST, but they make a 9.9 heavy. That's probably a little much. Um, but if you could find a 10.6 medium heavy, I'm pretty sure Fenwick makes one, and those are great for float fishing salmon with a spinning reel, anyways. And then for a spinning reel, I use these a lot for the pier to make these piscifunds. They are very affordable at $75, and they are a great reel for the money. If you want to get a little bit higher up there in price for a little bit better of a reel, I run the Daiwa BG, and those are fantastic reels, and they're practically bulletproof. So that's all there is to it. There's a ton of float fishing salmon, guys. Hope you guys learned, and hope you guys get on this season. So what are you looking for on the river, and where are you going? So you want to be on bends of the river. A lot of the bends in the river are going to have holes. Holes are going to be 4 to 6 feet, and again, on bigger rivers, the holes will be just on random stretches, and there'll be a lot of deep holes, 10 to 20 feet. But I'm going to focus more here on the smaller rivers that the majority of people are going to be fishing. So you want to be looking on maps for bends in the river. There are going to be a lot of people already there when you get there, because salmon fishing is no secret in the Midwest. Let me tell you what. And you're going to be wanting to start at the hole and float all the way down, and you're going to have to learn every hole. There's going to be snags in almost every single hole. And once, I'd spend a couple, maybe days scouting where you want to fish and learning the holes in the river. Maybe even show up a month before the salmon run and learn the holes in the river, learn the snags, you know, mark some stuff on your map where you think they might be. All that is going to help you getting fish, and the more experience you have, the better you're going to be.